Hi friends, in Planet Earth Dating, it's Wednesday, November 16th, 2016. In both the Lynn life and the Jamie body mind, the authorized souls remain only child souls from the denser, smaller levels, and the efforts continue to clear the larger level soul presences that continue on in a parade, and in addition to do the work that is ours to do right now in all dimensions, to manifest the divine plan no matter what anyone else does or doesn't do, and to do it with a good attitude. Why?
True.
Because we're the ones who suffer when our attitudes are poor.
That's true.
And with that, the formally videoed portions of today's efforts begin. Well, other people also suffer when our attitudes are poor. I'm being corrected, and that's true.
That's true.
Everybody suffers when poor attitudes are in play.
That's
poor
true.
attitudes are a lose-lose-lose proposition. So what is a good attitude? Somebody is asking. That's a good question. Well, one essential component of a good attitude is to acknowledge what's really going on.
That's true.
Another essential component is to look for the gifts.
Oh, that's true.
To have curiosity. Probably potato is a good attitude.
That is true.
The components of potato are a good attitude, and they include curiosity about what the situation actually calls for, attitude of experimentation, trying things, taking action to do what the situation seems to call for, adjusting course as information comes in that shows, oh, that isn't what the situation calls for precisely. We could make it more precise.
That's true.
Taking action to build commitment, and then committing to resolving the problem, and then continuing to take action to resolve the problem until the problem is resolved.
That's true.
That's a good attitude. We call it potato because one day after this awakening occurs, potato will be common. And how do we know that? Somebody says, it's definitional. Until potato occurs, there isn't an awakening. It's
That's
definitional.
True.
Look up. Let's bifurcate. All of us who are right now drawing our channels up, holding our channels up, and asking with the intent to hear the advice from above, what now in order to manifest the divine plan, no matter what anyone else does or doesn't do. All of us to search for truth's central axis, all others flung away, and as we do so, bifurcating gently, a little bit of flow starts coming up just naturally.
That's
so
true.
we can exhale dead presences from the denser, smaller levels, giving them a space to move through this dimension, not blocking their way at least, and intending to provide some level of updraft through here so that these presences can get closer to God, closer to the term we're using now, somebody's asking, closer to a consistent source of truth and inspiration.
That's true.
Now there's big argument that has a feeling of wanting to argue with the larger assignment rather than what's really going on. It doesn't feel like anything that's helpful. You're just trying to delay us. But I'm going to answer why truth and inspiration, because we have to mix it up. People get jaded with various terms, and finding something that's helpful and truthful is quite the trick.
That's true.
And if somebody isn't a consistent source of truthfulness, then they aren't helpful. And inspiration is helpful. Encouragement matters more than we think it does. That's an expression from the teachings of many teachers of many years.
That's true.
And so to be a consistent source of truth and inspiration, that could be a way of relating to a higher vibration presence.
Quieter.
Yes, now it's quiet. Boom, boom. Drawing our own channels up. My channels.
Mine.
Merging with aspects of self who don't have channels up. Drawing the channels up with the intent to hear the advice from above. Finding the rings of light. Going up. Leading the parade from the denser, heavier regions to the lighter, less dense regions. Getting closer to a consistent source of truth and inspiration. This way, this way, this way.
This way.
Somebody's saying something that isn't true. They're talking about the bald eagle that was circling really low over us as we were preparing to film, and that part is true. There was a bald eagle circling really low over us.
Yes, that's true.
But the rest of what you're saying isn't true. It's not true. And they're talking about the demonstration on behalf of the Standing Rock Sioux yesterday.
Yes,
and
that's true.
How the demonstrators had poor attitudes.
That's true.
Also, everybody there that we saw had poor attitudes, basically. The business people in downtown St. Pete had poor attitudes. The police had poor attitudes. The demonstrators had poor attitudes. Everybody was angry and looking for a way to express it.
That's true.
But now, in order to manifest the divine plan, no matter what anyone else does or doesn't do, and again our focus is brought to the need to exhale the dead presences who are dead in previous events of apparently mass death, and let them move through us to get to lighter realms so that a black hole doesn't collapse around them.
That's true.
Which can happen. We've seen it happen. We've watched it happen multiple times now.
That's true.
And it's a lot harder to clean up that mess than it is to prevent it from happening.
That's true.
And how do we prevent it from happening? Well, all that we can do is exhale the dead. Other people have to also take responsibility for their own poor attitudes. It's poor attitudes that are creating these black holes. Have you done an attitude check lately? Come on, look up, look up, look up. Attempt to hear the advice from above. Look up, find the rings of light, go up. And again, they're bringing our attention to that circling bald eagle.
That's true.
But listen, when we were driving through that devastated area of construction, all those nature realms presences abandoned ship. They aren't more enlightened than anybody else. I know you want us to say that they are more enlightened. I can tell that that's what you want us to say. But
that's what they want us to say.
That is what you want us to say. But I'm not going to say that. I would like for that to be true.
I would like for that to be true.
I really would. And that was actually my working theory, our working theory, the collective's working theory for a really long time. But that is not what our experimentation has shown, sadly. And we don't like it any more than you do, but what's true is still true. What do we know? We know that there were events of mass death at various points after 1950 in planet Earth dating.
Yes, that's
and
true.
How widespread the mass deaths were is hard to tell, but we can find one in the early 1950s. We can find one in the early 1960s. We can find one in the early 1980s.
That's true.
We can find one in the early 2000s.
That's true.
And we can find one in 2014.
That's true.
And they all come up with heavy substance, and people who seem to be just still carrying on their normal lives, quote unquote, in astral realms, fully dead. They're still sitting at their desks and arguing with people around them as we're pulling the fabric of mass death up and out.
That's true.
Which is interesting. And it doesn't feel tangibly different than this dimension. It feels the same. It's just another data point that makes it look like maybe we're all dead and we're engaged in a mass delusion.
That's true.
Which is definitely has been a shock and a surprise to us, but the data continues to accumulate solidly on that side of the theory, not on the other side.
That's true.
Okay. What's real is still what's real. We don't have to like it or expect it. What's real is what's real.
That's true.
Everything else is fantasy and delusion. There's a lot of flow going right now.
That's true.
Let's just tune to straighten, improve the flow. Let it move up, pump it up.
Creating the errors of thinking. A lot of errors of thinking up the back.
Yes.
And up higher above the head.
Yes.
Back to the areas of thinking.
And pulling the fabric of mass death out, hand over hand, picking one of those events. And we don't have to pick the same one, but pick an event. Think about it, focus on it, intend to connect with that particular event of mass death. I'm working with that one during the Korean War.
I'm working with 9/11.
The error is actually what is occurring after the event of mass death. When I feel for it, the big error occurs after the event of mass death.
That's
when we presences, we sentiences, seem to have a collective decision to ignore that, pretend that didn't just happen,
That's true.
pretend that life is continuing on as it always has, rather than that we have just shifted from one dimension to another.
That's true.
That seems to be the error. The error is of not acknowledging, oh hey, I think we all just died. And of course there are other errors also involved in what led up to those events, but I think the significant one in this moment at least are the events of agreeing to fantasize.
That is true.
Yes. We could correct those errors, the errors of agreeing to fantasize.
That feels really good.
It does. And it unstoppers some flow.
That's true.
How am I exactly like this?
Merging with all aspects of
Self, agreeing to fantasize, and correcting that error. For myself, whoever I am, in all
That's true.
presences, all aspects of self, and all aspects of sentience.
And including the emissions for the lifetime of the physical host, lifetime of the ground zero host.
That's just a difference.
It's a different feeling.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Taking this poorly done work.
And there's a big shift.
That's true. Between the two. Boom and then boom. Yeah. It's very cool.
Fascinating.
Right?
The data continues to
Fall on the
accumulate.
side. That's true. And poorly done
Go
work.
figure, right?
That's true. Too well done.
Maybe none of us are.
It's possible.
Somebody up there must be. Some big presence. What do I base it on? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
Maybe
I just
none of
heard
us
what do
are.
you base it on too?
Absolutely nothing.
I
don't know.
what
Just
I base it on.
I don't know. It just seems. Basing it on nothing. I can let it go.
I'm not basing that on anything.
I can let it go. Maybe none of us are physical.
Maybe none of us are physical. I can let that go. Correcting the errors for the week. The week that ends this coming Saturday at midnight. Correcting the errors for the month of November, start to finish. Including the emissions for the formerly videoed portions of today's efforts. Including the emissions for today, this whole day, start to finish. Including the emissions for the week that ends this coming Saturday at midnight. Including the emissions for the month of November, start to finish.